I'll be your banner.
All right. Good morning, Minister Clark. Good morning, mayors, ladies and gentlemen. Technology problems this morning, so I'm joining Pam over here at the chamber to do my introduction. I have the honor of introducing Minister Steve Clark. He was first elected MPP for Leeds Grenville on March 4th, 2010 by by-election. It was a landslide victory with MPP Clark winning 66% of the vote. He was subsequently re-elected in October 2011 in the provincial election and won re-election for a third term in office in June of 2014. Most recently on June 7th, 2018, Steve was re-elected as MPP for the newly named riding of Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes. Steve gained attention across Canada in 1982, when at the age of 22, just out of university, he was elected mayor of the city of Brockville, and this gained him the title of youngest mayor of Canada and a notation in the who's who of Canada. Steve served 3 terms as mayor, and during this tenure was also the president of the Association of the Municipalities of Ontario. Steve has also worked in the media and internet development with Brockville Recorder Times newspaper and RipNet. Following this, Steve served as executive assistant for the highly respected, long-serving Leeds Grenville MPP Bob Runciman. Prior to his election as Leeds Grenville MPP, Steve was the CAO for the Township of Leeds and Thousand Islands. Steve also boasts 40 years of community volunteerism. Some of the many groups and committees he has served with are St. Lawrence Lodge, the Brockville Braves, the Brockville and Area YMCA, and he is also a past president of the Rotary Club of Thousand Islands and was the founding chairman of the 2007 Leeds Grenville International Plowing Match and Country Festival. Steve is married to Deanna. Together, they are proud parents of a blended family of 5. Mitchell, Caitlin, Jordan, Alex, Megan, and grandparents of Georgie, not Gregory, sorry, Mila, Eli, Rowan, and Ivan. Welcome, Minister Clark.
Well, thanks, Jeanette, for that great introduction. I guess I'm going to have to shorten my bio so I can get a shorter introduction, but thanks.
It's all good.
Yeah, no worries. But thanks so much, and thanks, Jeanette, to you and also to Angela for sponsoring today. You've always supported me at this event and always sponsored this event, and I just want to thank both you and Angela, even though she can't be with us today, just for your unwavering support of the community during the pandemic. You've done so much for our business community, and I want to say to both of you that are sponsoring this event, just thank you for your continuing support of our chamber. And we've got a great chamber. So good morning, everybody. I can see the Hollywood squares of Zoom. Want to thank you all for being here today. Isn't it so interesting that finally Steve Clark has good weather for a chamber speech and it's virtual. So my goodness, I don't know what we're going to do, but I am a bit disappointed. I had hoped that we would be able to have our bacon and eggs and have a bit of camaraderie. And I know that's going to happen at future breakfasts. So I know that this is not the only event you're going to do this year. And I hope all of the rest of them are in person. I think we're all champing at the bit to get together. But I do want to take a few moments before I talk about the sort of the year in review. Is I want to recognize the chamber. So the chamber has performed so very admirably, and I think our region is so very fortunate to have so many strong chambers of commerce advocating for members on issues at all 3 levels of government. Both, my event. I know MP Barrett was here last month, and I'm assuming Mayor Calavis is going to speak at some point in the very near future. You've always done such a great job, as all chambers have done in Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes, to represent things. And I especially want to thank you, Pam, for your advocacy, not just with our local chamber, but with the Ontario Chamber as well. And we're so very well served by you and your staff. And I see Jan. Jan's my top right Hollywood Square, so I got to mention Jan as well. So, maybe we'll start with COVID-19, and we'll talk about some of our business supports. We'll talk about some of our local successes. I'll talk very briefly at the end about some things that are happening within the ministry, and then hopefully we'll have a chance to take some questions. And I see Ronald Zajac, wouldn't be Ronald Zajac without being the first one in the chat to ask if there's a question. So anyway, we'll move on to that. So COVID-19 over the last year has added challenges to all of our lives. I remain very thankful to all the frontline workers who have supported us through this pandemic, and I'm committed to supporting them in this battle. And it's affected the way, and I don't have to tell you this, it's affected the way we operate, and especially government. We've operated differently in government because of the pandemic than we would have if we hadn't have had to deal with this. So we've had increased demand for healthcare services, and that impacts the dramatic increases that our government has made to our hospitals and our public health over the last 2 years. We've had significant new funding that we had to find to ensure that schools were as safe as possible to return to in-person learning. And we've had restrictions on businesses, tourism, cultural, recreational activities that required government to put a plan in place to protect these industries, which are so important to our region. So since the very first day of the pandemic, the government's provided unprecedented levels of support to protect people, to protect jobs, and to protect our economy. And I want to tell you, we're going to continue to make that commitment to you moving forward. We've provided some targeted relief for businesses that have been impacted by public health measures aimed at blunting the spread of the Omicron variant. And each time that we've been forced to restrict businesses or activities, we've had to step up with supports to workers and to businesses. So we recently announced as a government another round of the COVID-19 small business support grants that are going to assist businesses that were most affected and most impacted by the capacity limit change, and provide those small eligible businesses with that grant payment of $10,000. We're also allowing people who previously qualified under the Ontario Small Business Support Grant. They're going to be pre-screened. Many of them have already received emails, asking those pre-screening questions. So they're not going to have to reapply to the program. And new applications are going to be when the portal opens. I've been told this week. I'm told as early as tomorrow. So watch through Pam, because she'll be an excellent conduit on that information. But in conversations I've had with Minister Bethenfalvy, Minister Romano, and Minister Fideli, I'm told it's this week, as early as tomorrow. So that I'll just park that, and you can see how close I am to what my colleagues have told me. So back on January 18th, applications were open for the Ontario Business Cost Rebates Program. And as most of you know, eligible businesses that were required to close indoor activities like restaurants can receive a rebate payment to up to the equivalent of 100% of their costs. So it's for those that had to reduce capacity limits by 50%, such as smaller retail stores, they can receive a rebate equivalent to 50% of their cost. And that's in addition to the electricity rate support that we've put forward as a government. I think all of you know, for 21 days starting on that date, Tuesday, January 18th, our electricity prices were set 24 hours a day at the off-peak rate of 8.2 cents. So those are some of the measures we put in as well for those restaurants. I know it didn't get a lot of publicity locally, but we cut the wholesale alcohol price by approximately $60 million in that annual support to allow restaurants and bars and other businesses to make it easier for a variety of things. Licensing patios, include alcohol as part of their food order. So there was a number of reforms we put forward targeted to help those particular sectors. And then we made a number of cash flow improvements. So we wanted to improve cash flows. We made about a $7.5 billion announcement through a 6-month interest and penalty-free period starting on the 1st of January 2022 on most of the provincially administered taxes. So, businesses can make that decision to provide that flexibility, give them a little more long-term planning by being able to opt into that program. And then building on our efforts to improve cash flows, we continue to call on the federal government. And I know Minister Bethlenfalvy has talked to Minister Freeland many, many times about encouraging the federal government to match the provincial tax deferral efforts to allow small businesses impacted by those public health measures to defer their HST remittances for a period of 6 months. So we're going to continue to advocate for that as well. We've had to deal with a lot, from a government perspective and from Cabinet and Treasury Board. We've had hundreds and hundreds of meetings since the pandemic began. But at the same time, we wanted to make a real effort to improve our competitiveness. We weren't going to let COVID-19 stop us. We wanted to put those competitiveness measures in. And I could hold up the chamber report that I've read so many times, but I've always said at this chamber breakfast, I think each and every time I've quoted chamber reports that talk about well-run companies want to invest in well-run jurisdictions. And that's why our government's maintained our open for business, open for jobs approach. That's an approach that's getting results. And I'm just going to give you a Coles Notes version of what we've seen in the province. We continue to see employment increasing. We now have over 100,000 more jobs than we did before the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we continue as a province to lead Canada in job creation. We look past the pandemic to envision what Ontario is going to look like in the future. We've made bold investments to attract new good paying jobs for workers. We want to position our province at the center of new global initiatives to build a stronger, more sustainable Ontario for the years to come. And one of those strategies that we announced in November that we're going to continue to work on to transform our economy is the auto industry and the auto strategy driving prosperity, which is the future of Ontario's automotive sector. And we've launched a number of initiatives, including the Ontario Vehicle Innovation Network, OVIN. We've committed about $56 million over the next 4 years to put innovators and entrepreneurs and SMEs at the forefront of our automotive strategy. We want to also ensure that workers have the skills that they need to not just deal with the jobs of today, but also the jobs of tomorrow. And, we've really worked hard as a government. Minister McNaughton on the skills and labor file has worked extremely hard to ensure that we've got a robust plan in place to be able to get those students the skills that they need. And I know Glenn Vogelbrecht is accessing this call via his phone, and Glenn and the folks at St. Lawrence College have just done a tremendous job working with our government on a variety of programs, including nursing and PSWs. And I know that our college is going to be sustainable for many, many years to come because they get it. They understand what the government's trying to do. So on the job front, last year we talked about 3M and Greenfield Global and the support that myself and our government has given. I remember like it was yesterday when Premier Ford said that we never want to be beholden to another jurisdiction for PPE. And I made 2 calls to 3M and to Greenfield. And I'm so glad that we're supporting those 2 expansions. And I'm so glad that we were at the forefront of making that happen. So this year, just a week or so ago, I had the honor of participating in the celebration of Biscuit Leclerc coming to Brockville in the former Procter & Gamble property. I was thrilled on behalf of the government to announce an Eastern Ontario Development Fund a grant of $1.5 million to help seal the deal with Biscuit Leclerc. And again, it was when the opportunity was brought to me, first of all, and I then brought it to the Premier and Minister Fedeli. This was something that we felt was very important for us to build upon the success that company has seen, not just in Ontario, but in other jurisdictions. These are good paying jobs, and the government of Ontario needs to be there to support it. So it was a great opportunity for us to signal those targeted investments to get not just Brockville's manufacturing sector, but Ontario's manufacturing sector, full of good local, good paying jobs. The other thing I want to talk to you about today is something that I have done right from the first day I was in the legislature. And again, I've talked about this before, but again, we've built upon what we've been able to accomplish. So my first day in the legislature, many of you know, we had nurses' jobs that were, nurses were being fired and beds were being closed at the Brockville General Hospital. That was my first day in the legislature. We had a significant problem in Ontario where medium-sized hospitals like the Brockville General Hospital were penalized for their funding formula. Were not given the money that I felt they deserved based on other jurisdictions. We needed to build healthier, safer communities. And I've always argued that my taxpayers pay their fair share of provincial taxes, and in return, we need to have our fair share of provincial services. And right from the first day in government in 2018, I made it a mission to fix that funding formula because I never wanted to see beds closed or nurses fired again at the hospital, like we saw under the previous government. So we fixed the hospital funding formula. A symptom of the hospital funding formula was the fact that over time, there was a significant working capital deficit. I delivered to the hospital $25.6 million to deal with that historic working capital problem. We delivered an operating increase of 7.2%, another $5 million on top in 2021, 2022. And the whole point of doing this, the whole point of stabilizing our hospital financially so that it would be positioned to grow. So we'd be able to provide the new services that everyone else was able to access in other more urban jurisdictions. So what did we end up doing? We ended up supporting in October the Brockville General Hospital to secure annual funding for a new MRI machine. This announcement means better access for care closer to home for area residents who've faced long waits and out of town travel, myself included. Anybody who's had to have an MRI knows that we didn't have those services locally. Now we're going to have those services locally. And we're going to have those services locally because we fixed a historic funding inadequacy at the hospital, so we don't have to worry about that again. So I'm going to continue to work hard to build on these investments so that we can continue to support high quality and timely access to healthcare. But healthcare is not the only thing we're working on. And historically, in all my time as an MPP, we've never seen increases in long-term care. And one of the things that COVID-19 has shown us is we needed to make investments in an LTC. We made a commitment to fund more long-term care beds. We made a commitment in the election to build 15,000 new long-term care beds. We've made a significant announcement in redevelopment here in Leeds-Grenville. We've had an additional 294 net new beds being built, another 126 being redeveloped. I see Mayor Seau, his face is on my 12 Hollywood Squares. So he's well aware of the commitments that we've made, not once, but twice to Mapleview Lodge in Athens that builds upon the investments we've made in Kempville at Southbridge. And there's more to come. There's more to come supporting increased capacity at LTC and long-term care. So that's a positive. The infrastructure improvements that we've made, MP Barrett and I made announcements in every corner of the riding, supporting infrastructure, including right here in Brockville at the city's clock tower. These are targeted investments that the province and the federal government are making together. And then, my old friend, my predecessor, my mentor, Bob Runciman, I was able to make an announcement with Bob Runciman and Holly Q on the St. Lawrence Parks Commission. And we're going to spend more than $5 million on capital funding to help repair those facilities that are part of the St. Lawrence Parks Commission, including a historic investment at their their longest facility being Browns Bay Beach and picnic area, some $3 million. So we continue to follow up our investments in healthcare and long-term care with infrastructure, not just in our municipal partners, but also in some of our provincial agencies. So I'm going to close, Pam, just to talk briefly about municipalities. And in my role as Minister of Municipal Affairs, we've done a lot to support our municipal partners. At Roma a couple of weeks ago, I announced 322 projects, some $28 million under the Municipal Modernization Fund. There was a release yesterday about a meeting I went to with Augusta and Prescott, where they're working together on some economic development initiatives. Basically, every municipality over the last 3.5 years, in some way, shape, or form, has benefited because of the Municipal Modernization Fund, which drives efficiencies, shared services, digitization of services, and it follows up on some of the initiatives that we've made last month. The Premier and I met with a variety of mayors, both big city and rural and northern. We announced a new $45 million Streamlined Development Fund, which will help get shovels in the ground faster because our province has a housing crisis. We've seen demand outpace supply significantly, and we've also seen demands locally in the community housing sector. We saw as a government an urgent need for housing in Leeds and Grenville. As a result, our community housing renewal strategy has not just given municipalities over $1.3 billion over the last 2 years, but right here locally, the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville has received from my ministry an additional $6 million over and above the millions of dollars we give them every year to provide safe, stable housing for our most vulnerable. And I want to highlight this because it comes up a lot in conversation. The funding is extremely flexible. You know, I'm not going to tell the 47 service managers across Ontario what their local housing priorities are. I'm going to make sure they have the money, in this case, $6 million more, and I'm going to allow those mayors and county councillors to make those decisions that make sense in our riding and other ridings across the province. So it is an important investment that we've made. We made it because we needed to make it in the middle of a pandemic. And at Roma a couple of weeks ago, I indicated that there was more dollars to come, which brings me to an announcement that was made this morning. So right about the time that this event started today, I announced the results of my housing task force. So we appointed a task force to look at market housing. So the Housing Affordability Task Force provided recommendations from home builders, nonprofits, economists, the municipal sector on how we can get housing built faster. The report includes recommendations on how to streamline the planning approval process, how can we cut red tape and lower costs that are ultimately passed on to homeowners and tenants. We need to align efforts of all three levels of government. And the one thing we heard over and over again, we have to incent more housing. We've got to get shovels in the ground faster. And our consultations are going to continue with the industry, with municipalities and the public. But we've heard a lot of bold ideas and new perspectives. As minister now, my job is to balance these ideas. I need to put forward a realistic, forward-thinking policy that actually addresses the housing supply crisis. And I do so knowing that the work that we've done in 2019 with our housing supply action plan has resulted in increases across the province on all types of housing, all types, both rental and a variety of home ownership. We just need to do more. We've seen locally in Brockville, I just did an interview with Doreen Barnes last week where building starts in Brockville were up 46% last year, which was a high after many, many years. But we also know that's not enough, that there's still a housing supply problem. We need to work with all three levels of government and our partners to get the job done. So that's just a bit of overview on sort of the year in review. I hope I've given enough time for questions, but I want to close by thanking Pam and all the staff at the Brockville and District Chamber of Commerce. You've just continue to just do great things, advocating for business in the riding. It's an honor for me to be the MPP for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes, and I look forward to continuing the partnership with you. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, and we can have a continued conversation. So thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Minister, for taking the time to speak with us. Great update. And it's always a pleasure working with you. And I want to thank you for supporting us on a few initiatives that we've been running, such as the rapid antigen screening kits and the Shot Local program that was delivered through the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. But I know both levels of government has supported that initiative too. And it did get extended for Valentine's Month, we call it. So thank you again. So I know there was a couple of questions in the chat box. I think the first one was from Rob from the YMCA. So Rob, did you want to go ahead and just verbalize it instead of be writing the chat?
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's pretty long. So thanks, Minister Clark. And as always, thanks for the support you give the YMCA, and especially through the pandemic, and supporting our Trillium grants and all that sort of stuff. So we look forward to converting those tennis courts and putting in pickleball courts and basketball courts. And particularly the meeting that you had set up with Minister McLeod just to talk about the shortage of lifeguarding instructors and whatnot for water safety. So appreciate you facilitating that meeting with us. The question I have is around childcare, and locally, we serve over 1,000 families a year in childcare across Leeds Grenville through licensed home childcare, school age, and our center-based care. And with the province being so far the only province without a $10 a day childcare agreement with the federal government, we're starting to receive calls about when we're going to be able to charge family $10. So just wondering on the status update with that, and also piggybacking on that, with the staff shortage of quality, qualified early childhood educators, is there also a strategy regarding retention and recruitment for childcare support staff? So thanks a lot.
Yeah, no, and it's a great question, Rob. So first of all, it is a pleasure to work with you, and I know I saw Tom Russell on here earlier, and we've got some great representatives, Jim Pickard on the Trillium review team. The volunteers do a fantastic job, and great that we were able to support your project. And you'll have to teach me how to play pickleball. So I haven't had time during the pandemic to take the game up. So you'll have to show me the ins and outs once we get the courts converted. A week doesn't go by, almost a day doesn't go by where I don't advocate on behalf of constituents regarding the childcare file. And I think your second question regarding retention and expansion of staff, I think that will come once there's certainty around the $10 daycare deal. I know Minister Lecce and his staff are working diligently to try to do the deal. Obviously, it's complex because we just have such a different system than every other province and territory. So it is a complex problem. I'm confident that we're going to get a deal in the very near future. And I know Minister Lecce is working hard to give people that certainty. So I appreciate that this is a question. If I get it almost on a daily basis, you must just be bombarded because you're our big childcare provider in the area. You're the one that people go to for that confidence. I know, even as you know, Deanna, the twins, and Megan, that was their first daycare facility was at the Y. In fact, it was Sandra Devaney who was the one who looked after them at the time. So I know how important it is. I know how important it is for us. I know from my grandkids how important having that certainty is. So I'm hoping that Minister Lecce will get a deal done as soon as possible. And I'm going to continue to advocate for families in Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes that we get that deal done.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Does anybody else have any questions? I know Ron does.
Ronald's going to have it.
I knew Ron was. I just was wondering anybody else on the call too. All right, go ahead, Ron.
Oh, hi. Okay. Just wanted to pick up on the issue of housing, actually. Obviously, I mean, Minister Clark, you've been consistent in stating that the solution to the housing affordability crisis is rapid increase in supply. And when you consider that Brockville is basically a roughly 21 square kilometer quadrangle and with no expansion capability outside, and sort of limited, free space. Do you think density alone, densification, will provide enough supply to municipalities like Brockville to create market conditions that make new homes more affordable to first-time buyers? Or is it time to consider parallel options on the other end, the consumer end, to try and make it easier to purchase, for those first-time buyers?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, Ronald. And the Housing Affordability Task Force report didn't deal with those demand side issues. So yes, I think municipalities need to look at available land. I think all three levels of government, provincial, federal, and municipal, have available land that's sat idle for a number of years, and they need to look at those. I think intensification is something that needs to be looked at in every corner of the province, especially for purpose-built rental. Even though our housing supply action plan has caused an increase in purpose-built rental, the likes we haven't seen since 1992, we can still do more. So, and as well, most of our municipalities in Leeds, Grenville have just started to implement the recommendations from the Housing Supply Action Plan in 2019. So we're just starting to see some of those situations have been looked at. But even looking at provincial land, I can tell you that over the years, for example, we've had a number of individuals look at the former Brockville Psychiatric Hospital lands as abandoned space to be redeveloped. And while we are going to be developing the north end for a correctional expansion at the St. Lawrence Valley Treatment Center and a new Brockville jail, there's still a significant portion of land on the south. And I've had many people try to deal with Infrastructure Ontario, and they're extremely frustrated that Infrastructure Ontario doesn't provide more land opportunities for housing development. So that's something that I'm working on right now. But I think municipalities need to use every tool that we've got, and also they need to ensure that their processes speed up development. And that's something that we've heard over and over again.
Okay. If you just indulge me in something that's really, really topical this morning. We're all aware of the protests in Ontario, in Ottawa. And as of this morning, I believe the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor is closed down. These disruptions are obviously have the potential to have a large impact on business. I'm wondering, I know that there are beefs with the federal government. Do you foresee a role for the province in dealing with these disruptions? And if you'll permit me, I guess the Premier Ford and the government, you've been quite reliant on science and the science table throughout this pandemic for dealing with how to respond. Whereas the demands of some of these protesters are increasingly, if you might say, divorced from science. Are you worried that there's this shift in the public mood that is sort of departing from science and reacting more with emotion and resulting in these disruptions? And can something be done about that?
Well, first of all, I wasn't aware of the Windsor protests today, but I was aware of what was happening around Queen's Park. And you look at how the Toronto police and the municipality and the province dealt with the Toronto situation, and it was very peaceful and it was dispersed. There was no long-term disruption to business, which has not been the case in Ottawa. I know that the chief there has reached out to the Solicitor General for further assistance. But I think it's important to know that there are some municipalities like Toronto that were able to allow a protest in an orderly way to allow people to get their feelings out without having to disrupt businesses and individuals who live there on a long-term basis. So no, I think there is different ways to approach protest. Obviously, there's protests in front of my office regularly. There was one down at City Hall. I heard yesterday. People are going to peacefully protest and express their views. As a government, we're going to continue to rely on the Chief Medical Officer of Health. We've got a plan to safely and gradually reopen that we're accomplishing. I think with as much opportunity as possible for people. And, we're going to continue with those plans locally. Local mayors and I meet every Friday at 10 o'clock with Dr. Paula Stewart, and we have our members of parliament on the calls as well. So, we have the politicians at all three levels are continuing to work with health and deal with things on a science basis. And locally, that's why we had such a high vaccine uptake. That's why, when we've reopened, since we've moved into the next stage, that we haven't seen the uptick in cases like you've seen in other jurisdictions throughout the world. So hats off again, like I started my speech, thanking those frontline workers and thanking people like Paula Stewart. She's done a great job.
Wonderful. So any more questions from the floor? Okay, well, if not, I'll just do a little closing here. Once again, thank you, Minister Clark. Really appreciate your time. It's always very, very important to get an update from Queen's Park, and we appreciate your time doing that. Coming up for us in March, we are getting back out there. So we're going to be doing a Zoom call with Kevin Savoy, Coach Kevin Savoy, to when we get to go back out there and really network and stuff, we want you to get ready. So we're doing a Zoom call on March 3rd for that. So that information will be going out very shortly. And then of course, Mayor Calabasas' update from City Hall will be March 14th, and that will be done by Zoom. And then our AGM is March 31st, and we are in person. By that time, we're hoping with the requirements of the different stages, we've timed it that it should be fully open, and that is our wish and hope and pray that we can do that. And we have some special announcements around the AGM, but that will be coming soon. I won't be announcing that today. Also, with the supports from all levels of government, like Minister Clark was indicating, we also have that on our website, and we try to update everybody in our business community through all of our social media and our website with that information. And I believe that next intake is today, Minister Clark, so on the small business grant. But if it's not, I will make sure that I get that information out to the business community. So once again, thanks everybody for joining us today. I appreciate your time. And if there's anything that the Chamber could do for you, please reach out to us. We're in the office and we're here to help. So once again, have a great day. And thanks again for everybody joining us today.